Oil has always been at the heart of Middle East politics, and today I will tell you how it shapes the relationship between Turkey and Iraq, which is now at its best in years. So why did Turkey suddenly shut down a pipeline that was pumping nearly 500,000 barrels of oil a day? Why did Iraq take Turkey to court and win? And how did Kurdish oil trigger a $1 billion international dispute? This story shows how oil can turn allies into rivals and rivals into partners. This court ruling didn't just slap Turkey with a $1.5 billion fine. It flipped the switch off on one of the world's major oil routes. In March 2023, the International Chamber of Commerce in Paris ruled against Turkey in its oil dispute with Iraq. The court said Turkey violated a 1973 pipeline agreement by allowing oil exports from Iraqi Kurdistan without Baghdad's approval. The result, a $1.5 billion penalty for Turkey and a sudden shutdown of Kirkuk-Ceyhan pipeline, cutting off about 450,000 barrels of oil per day. That's roughly 0.5% of the world's oil supply gone overnight. So, why all the fuss? To understand the drama, we need to go back to who really owns Iraq's oil and why Turkey got involved in the first place. The Kirkuk-Ceyhan pipeline, also known as the Iraq-Turkey pipeline, is a 970-kilometer energy lifeline stretching from Iraq's northern oil fields in Kirkuk to the Turkish port of Ceyhan. The trouble began when the Kurdistan Regional Government (KRG), a semi-autonomous region in northern Iraq, started exporting oil to Turkey without approval from Baghdad. Iraq's central government insisted that only its state oil company, SOMO, could handle exports, but the KRG claimed it needed control over its own oil to keep its economy afloat. This disagreement over who controls Iraq's oil revenues, Baghdad or Erbil, sparked years of political and legal tensions. Here is the twist. Turkey, once a fierce opponent of Kurdish independence, started buying oil directly from the Kurds. In 2013, the KRG built a pipeline that linked its oil fields like Tak and Tavuk to the main Kirkuk-Ceyhan line. By 2014, Kurdish oil was flowing straight to Turkey's state oil company, BOTAŞ, which then sold it to global markets in Europe and Asia. You would think Turkey never go for this. After all, more oil money for the KRG could mean more independence from Iraq, and Turkey has long feared the creation of an independent Kurdish state. Ankara had fought the PKK for decades and was cautious about strengthening Kurdish autonomy. And what's more interesting is, most of the Kurdish oil that Turkey bought, it ended up in Israel. That's right, despite political tensions since 2009, Turkey has quietly sold nearly all KRG oil to Israel, and ironically, while diplomatic ties were frozen, trade between the two countries kept growing, with oil making up a big chunk of it. By mid-2015, Israel was reportedly importing up to 3/4 of its crude oil needs from the KRG. Notably, in February 2023 alone, Israel imported approximately 183,000 barrels per day of Kurdish oil, of its consumption averaging around 210,000 barrels per day. So while Ankara and Tel Aviv clashed on the surface, behind the scenes, energy deals were quietly keeping the relationship alive. Still, Turkey struck energy deals with the KRG, bypassing Baghdad entirely. Why? Because it wanted cheaper oils and stronger ties with Kurdistan, and possibly even personal gain for Erdogan. According to some reports, the company that exported the Iraqi oil was tied to Erdogan family. Iraq wasn't happy. It called the deal smuggling and filed for arbitration in 2014, demanding up to $30 billion in damages. Turkey claimed it wasn't responsible for the oil entering the pipeline, but the court disagreed. Things escalated. A Kurdish independence vote led to a military standoff and major oil losses. In 2017, the KRG held a controversial independence referendum. Baghdad hit back hard. Iraqi forces moved in and took control of Kirkuk, home to a key oil fields that made up about 40% of the KRG's exports. This military showdown, often called the Baghdad-Erbil conflict, was a turning point. Iraq's Supreme Court later ruled the KRG's oil and gas laws unconstitutional, tightening Baghdad's control. Turkey stayed net neutral during the conflict, walking a fine line between its economic interests with the KRG and its diplomatic ties with Baghdad. So, did Turkey really lose the case, or did both sides walk away with mixed results? The 2023 ruling relied on the details of the 1973 Iraq-Turkey pipeline agreement, which had been updated in 2010 to state that the pipeline was strictly for oil exported through Iraq's SOMO. Iraq said Turkey broke the deal by loading Kurdish oil onto tankers without Baghdad's consent. The court agreed in part, ordering Turkey to pay $1.5 billion, but Iraq's other claims, like exclusive access and blocked entry to Ceyhan, were mostly dismissed. Turkey took this as a partial win. After all, it avoided Iraq's full $30 billion claim. Still, Turkey shut the pipeline, costing both countries millions daily. What do both sides want now? It's about more than oil, it's about leverage, it's about money and political control. Iraq wants the pipeline reopened, but only if all exports go through SOMO, ensuring Baghdad keeps control of oil revenues. They all expect Turkey to pay the $1.5 billion fine and stop any unauthorized Kurdish exports. Iraq is even exploring other export routes, like a potential pipeline through Syria, to reduce its reliance on Turkey. Turkey, on the other hand, wants a new agreement that increases pipeline use and transit fees. It's currently losing an estimated $2 to $3 million a day. Ankara also wants to expand cooperation with Baghdad on other issues like water sharing and gas. But with low trust and the KRG's uncertain role, negotiations are rocky. And while Baghdad and Ankara argue over past deals, the KRG is already looking ahead. In 2025, the Kurdistan Regional Government signed a massive $110 billion agreement with the US energy firms HKN Energy and Western Zagros to develop oil and gas fields in northern Iraq, especially around Dohuk and Erbil. These fields are believed to hold over 200 billion cubic meters of gas, and the KRG has long wanted to export that gas to Turkey. But here's the catch: Baghdad immediately rejected the deal, calling it unconstitutional. Under the Iraqi law, only the central government has the authority to manage natural resources, and Baghdad sees the KRG's deal as a direct challenge to that control. In July 2025, Turkey made a bold move, and Iraq is not happy. Turkey announced it would end the current pipeline deal in July 2026, signaling it wants better terms. This surprised many in Iraq. Some Iraqi officials see it as a pressure tactic, Turkey dragging its feet to avoid paying the fine and gain leverage. Others worry it could destabilize the region further, especially given tensions over Kurdish autonomy. Iraqis want the oil flowing again, but they are frustrated with what they see as Turkey's tough negotiating stance. So, where does this leave us? Will oil and politics start flowing again? And that's the complex story of the Turkey-Iraq oil pipeline dispute, a mix of money, politics, and shifting alliances. Will Ankara, Baghdad, and Erbil manage to strike a deal? Or are we headed for more gridlock? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.